You didn't lose attraction because you lacked confidence. You lost it because your behavior became unstable. You started reacting. You started explaining. You started adjusting yourself to keep someone interested. That was the moment attraction began to weaken. Confidence sounds good in dating advice, but confidence collapses the moment you fear losing someone. Discipline does not. Confidence says the right things. Discipline does the same things every day. In relationships, attraction does not respond to how secure you sound. It responds to how controlled your behavior remains under pressure. The moment you check your phone too often, the moment your tone changes based on their reply, the moment your boundaries soften to avoid tension, attraction notices. Not emotionally, structurally. You don't feel this happening. You don't get warned. You just notice less respect, less tension, less interest, and you assume confidence is missing. So you try to become smoother, more expressive, more present. But attraction does not recover through performance. It recovers through discipline. Because discipline does not chase stability. It creates it. And stability is what attraction quietly depends on. This is the part no one wants to hear. Attraction isn't impressed by how confident you feel. It is shaped by how consistently you act.
What follows after that instability is not a breakup. It is a quiet shift in how you are perceived. Most relationships don't lose attraction through conflict. They lose it through accommodation. You start making small adjustments, replying faster than you should, explaining yourself when nothing was questioned, softening standards to keep things smooth. None of this feels dramatic. It feels considerate. It feels mature. That's why it works against you. Attraction weakens when behavior starts negotiating for comfort, not because care is wrong, but because structure is being traded away. Most people think attraction fades because interest changes. In reality, interest changes because behavior stops holding its shape. The pattern is subtle. You become more available when tension appears. You reduce boundaries to avoid friction. You replace consistency with reassurance. The relationship continues, communication remains, affection may even increase, but something important disappears. Predictability under pressure. Attraction depends on knowing that behavior will not bend to emotion. Once it does, trust begins to loosen, not consciously, systemically. This is why attraction often fades without explanation. No argument caused it, no moment ruined it. Behavior slowly stopped signaling stability. And because this process is quiet, most people misdiagnose it. They think the solution is more confidence, more expression, more emotional presence. But attraction does not respond to emotional effort. It responds to behavioral integrity. Discipline fails quietly because it looks like flexibility. It looks like care. It looks like compromise, until attraction no longer recognizes structure. By the time this is felt, nothing obvious is broken. The system has simply adjusted downward, and that misunderstanding leads directly to the next mistake people make about attraction. The common belief is that attraction fades because confidence disappears. That if you sound less sure, attraction weakens. This belief feels true because confidence is easy to notice. It is verbal, it is expressive, it is visible. But attraction does not measure what is visible. It measures what is reliable. It is not confidence that holds attraction. It is discipline. Confidence reacts to reassurance. Discipline does not require it. It is not confidence that maintains standards. It is discipline. It is not confidence that keeps boundaries intact under pressure. It is discipline. Most people misunderstand attraction because they confuse clarity with control. They assume that saying the right things creates stability. But attraction does not respond to explanation. It responds to consistency. This is where the mistake deepens. When attraction starts to weaken, people try to sound stronger. They adjust tone. They communicate more. They attempt to manage perception. They believe attraction is restored through expression, but expression without structure creates noise. Confidence can exist without limits. Discipline cannot. Confidence rises when things feel secure. It disappears when fear enters the system. Discipline remains unchanged. This is why confident behavior often feels empty when attraction is already fading. It lacks weight. It lacks tension. Attraction is not drawn to intensity. It is drawn to stability under emotional pressure. The real misunderstanding is this: attraction does not leave because confidence is gone. Confidence disappears because discipline was compromised first. Once discipline weakens, confidence becomes compensation. It tries to replace structure with visibility. Attraction does not reward that. It quietly withdraws. And this misunderstanding prevents people from seeing how attraction actually works as a system. Attraction does not function emotionally. It functions structurally. It responds to how behavior holds form when pressure is applied. The first layer of this system is consistency, not excitement, not intensity. Consistency means behavior does not change to manage outcome. It does not speed up to seek reassurance. It does not soften to avoid discomfort. Discipline keeps action stable when emotions fluctuate. That stability creates reliability. Reliability creates trust. And trust is the foundation attraction rests on over time. When discipline weakens, behavior becomes reactive. Tone changes based on response. Availability changes based on fear. Standards shift to maintain connection. None of this feels dramatic, but it removes structural tension. Attraction requires tension to exist, not emotional tension, behavioral tension. The second layer is boundaries. Discipline enforces boundaries without explanation. It does not justify them. It does not negotiate them. Boundaries signal what behavior will not be tolerated. This clarity reduces uncertainty. Uncertainty dissolves attraction faster than conflict. Confidence can state a boundary once. Discipline enforces it repeatedly. The third layer is emotional control. Discipline separates internal feeling from external behavior. It prevents emotion from dictating action. Attraction weakens when emotions lead behavior, not because emotions are wrong, but because they introduce instability. Emotional control does not suppress feeling. It prevents feeling from overriding standards. This control creates calm under pressure. Calm signals safety. Safety allows attraction to remain stable. The final layer is responsibility. Discipline absorbs pressure without deflection. It does not seek reassurance. It does not outsource regulation. Responsibility keeps behavior intact when expectations rise, when tension increases, when stakes feel higher. Attraction responds to this integrity, not consciously, but predictably. This is why attraction often fades without explanation. The system loses discipline before it loses emotion. Words may still sound right, presence may still exist, but structure has already weakened. Attraction does not reward effort. It responds to stability. When discipline is intact, attraction does not need to be maintained. It remains as a byproduct of structure. When discipline collapses, attraction does not need to be destroyed. It simply loses support. Understanding this system shifts pressure away from performance and places it where attraction actually measures, on behavior under pressure.
This system does not respond to intention.
It responds to how you behave when reassurance is missing. Discipline in relationships is not about doing more. It is about not changing behavior to keep someone interested. This begins in small, unnoticeable moments. You do not alter your pace to wait for a reply. You do not soften boundaries to avoid tension. You do not explain standards just to be understood. When pressure appears, behavior must keep its shape. Not faster, not softer, not more expressive. This is where most people expose instability. They call it care. They call it flexibility. They call it emotional maturity. The system calls it loss of discipline. Discipline requires consistency without reinforcement, without praise, without reassurance. Standards must exist when attraction feels secure, and they must exist more clearly when uncertainty enters. This does not feel comfortable. It feels restrictive, and restriction is exactly what prevents attraction from collapsing. Discipline is not emotional distance. It is the ability to not react from fear of loss. Presence remains, interest remains, but behavior is no longer dictated by anxiety. This system does not reward effort, it rewards stability. When discipline is present, behavior does not persuade, it does not signal value, it does not seek validation, it simply remains intact. Attraction does not need to be maintained through performance, it is preserved through structure. And structure only survives when behavior is not negotiated under pressure. That is the requirement, not confidence, control.
Over time, behavior solidifies into pattern, and pattern becomes outcome. When discipline weakens, relationships do not usually end. They settle. Standards slowly lower. Boundaries become conditional. Emotional reactions increase. Attraction does not disappear, it recalibrates. What remains is familiarity without tension, connection without weight, presence without authority. The relationship still functions, but it no longer holds. This is why many long-term relationships feel flat rather than broken. Nothing dramatic happened, nothing obvious failed. Behavior simply stopped signaling stability. Confidence often increases at this stage. People talk more, explain more, reassure more. But confidence without discipline has no leverage. It becomes noise inside a system that already lost structure. Over years, this pattern produces predictable results. Respect becomes inconsistent. Trust becomes situational. Attraction becomes passive. Not because effort disappeared, but because discipline did. In contrast, when discipline remains intact, the system produces a different outcome. Behavior stays predictable under pressure. Boundaries remain enforced without discussion. Emotional control prevents volatility. Attraction does not spike. It stabilizes. It becomes quiet, durable, resistant to disruption. This kind of attraction does not need constant attention. It does not need reassurance. It does not need performance. It exists because the structure continues to hold. The difference between these outcomes is not personality. It is not confidence. It is not communication. It is whether discipline remained operational over time. And once patterns harden, they rarely reverse, which brings the system to its final rule. Attraction follows structure. It does not follow intention. Confidence creates presence. Discipline creates continuity. One appears when conditions feel safe. The other remains when conditions become uncomfortable. This is the rule most people resist, because discipline removes the illusion of control through expression.
It replaces it with control through behavior. Attraction does not need to be sustained by performance. It needs to be supported by consistency. When discipline is present, boundaries do not require explanation. Behavior does not signal for approval. Confidence does not seek reinforcement. The system holds on its own. When discipline is absent, confidence becomes noise. It attempts to replace structure with visibility. That replacement never works. This is why attraction fades without conflict, without argument, without a clear reason. The system was already unsupported. Discipline does not make attraction exciting. It makes it stable. And stability is what attraction ultimately responds to. Not charm, not boldness, not emotion. Structure. Discipline carries attraction.